Hello, everyone. My name is Osaze Cuomo. I'm a lecturer at Hyogo University in Hyogo, Japan. I'm coming to you today from my home, as you can see, where I have been teaching online for the past year, more than a year, actually. And like perhaps many of you, the pandemic has been a chance for me to reflect on my teaching, to think about what I'm doing, to kind of think about some of the basics of what I'm doing actually. And this has led me to think a little more about the role that curiosity can play in our classrooms. Uh, so that's what I would like to talk with you about today. Now, in this brief talk, I'll touch on three main points. First, I'll talk about what curiosity is, why it's important for language learning, and finally, I'll talk about how we can promote curiosity in our classrooms, whether that's in the face-to-face classroom or online. So, what is curiosity? Well, Lowenstein defines curiosity as an information gap between what we want to know and what we know. So there's a gap between our current knowledge and something we think might be useful for us in the future, for whatever reason. Another definition of curiosity, more recently from Grossnickel, is that curiosity is a desire for new knowledge, for new information, new experiences, new stimulation, again, to resolve gaps in our knowledge or to experience the unknown. So both of these ideas, already we can see how this relates to the language classroom, both in terms of the gap in knowledge, perhaps it's a gap in language skills and language ability, or it's the desire for something new, something novel. Perhaps our classes can provide something that our students do not get in their other studies, if we're in the university setting, such as myself, or if we're teaching adult students, perhaps we're giving them experiences or exposing them to ideas that they don't encounter in the rest of their day-to-day life. So, regardless of exactly how we define curiosity, one thing that is clear in the research I've done is that curiosity is a key part of what it is to be human. So, as humans, we are born curious from the various the earliest stages of our lives. We are curious about what is around us, and this kind of natural curiosity that babies possess, that young children possess, still remains in adults at the university level, or if you're teaching high school, even more so. This curiosity does not go away. So, despite what we may encounter in some of our classes where we might think our students are not very curious about this topic or that topic, they are, in fact, curious by nature, and that curiosity is there waiting for us. Okay, so we have an idea of curiosity. What is curiosity? It involves an information gap. It involves a desire for the new and a desire for the novel, and it is part of human nature. It is part of what it means for us to be human. Next, I'd like to talk a little about why curiosity is important for language learning. I touched on this a little already, but I'd like to talk about a few more points. So first, why is curiosity important for language learning? Well, curiosity is closely linked with cognition. in order to understand something new, and many times we need to first be curious about that new thing in order to direct our attention and be ready to absorb new information. So curiosity is the initial step, the first step in the learning process. And more practically, curiosity is a key part in sparking interest. And of course, interest is important on the part of our students, and it's important for ourselves as teachers too, to be interested in what we are doing. And of course, from the student's perspective, interested students are more likely to be paying attention, to be actively involved, which is, again, a key part of language learning. Going along with interest, but slightly different, is curiosity is important for emotional engagement. Again, curiosity can focus student interest in a way that will allow them to be emotionally engaged. And emotional engagement has been found to be a key component in improving learning outcomes. The more emotionally involved our students are with the material, the easier it is for them to form lasting relationships in their minds with the material and the real world, linking those together. It just creates a much more durable learning experience if students are emotionally engaged. And curiosity is a key part in sparking that emotional engagement. Additionally, curiosity can help promote motivation among our students. As we know, motivation is a key component of learning, similar to interest, similar to emotional engagement. Motivation can help students push through difficult aspects in the learning process. Motivation can boost their energy and excitement for what we're doing in the class. So taking that curiosity and moving it into the realm of motivation is something that we can think about how to do in our classes. And all of these aspects relate to improved learning outcomes. So, of course, we want an interesting class, we want an emotionally engaging class, we want happy and motivated students, but our ultimate goal for all of this is to improve the learning outcomes of our students. And all of these relate to improved learning outcomes. So that is why curiosity is something we should consider, because curiosity is the starting point for these other factors. Curiosity can lead to interest, lead to engagement, lead to increased motivation, increased cognition, and then overall improved learning outcomes. So we have an idea of what curiosity is, why it's important. Finally, I would like to talk about some strategies for how we can promote curiosity in our classrooms. Depending on your teaching context, you may have students who are naturally comfortable expressing their curiosity, or as is common in Japan, we have many students who are more reserved, who are a bit on the hesitant side to break from the mold, to potentially hold up the class, to contradict their teacher. So they need a bit more prompting. So that is what got me interested in this topic, is how I can improve the curiosity in my classes. So the first thing that we can do to promote curiosity in our classrooms is to develop a warm and welcoming classroom atmosphere. it's been shown that students who are nervous or stressed have more difficulty expressing themselves in the classroom, and they have more difficulty learning. But if students feel comfortable, they are much more likely to be able to ask questions, to think about things a little more deeply, to think about things more abstractly, to make connections between the material from that lesson with other things they may know. The classroom atmosphere is the key point in allowing students to take that first step towards curious inquiry. So the first thing we can do is to create a warm classroom atmosphere. We can also model curious inquiry. So we as teachers are in a position to model many things, and modeling asking questions, modeling being curious about the subject matter of the class, being curious about any topics that may be related to the language that we are studying in class, being curious about what our students think about the topics, what other people think. So we can model this curiosity, this kind of lifelong learning, lifelong approach to learning, which can then inspire our students to be curious. It can inspire our students to ask questions and not be right all the time. So we can act as the model for this curious inquiry. We can also promote the growth mindset. So I mentioned lifelong learning, the idea that everyone is always learning, that no one is perfect, and that by asking questions, we can learn about the world, that by asking questions, we can know more at the end of today than we did at the beginning. So this kind of growth mindset goes hand in hand with modeling the curious inquiry and creating a warm classroom atmosphere where we as a class are learning together, teachers and students. Everyone is learning, everyone is growing. And to do that, we are asking questions and thinking about things, making connections to other material that we may know, other experiences that we may have. It's all coming together into this kind of growth mindset, curious classroom. We can also think about focusing on the process of the class, what we are doing in the class, the progress we are making, the effort we are putting forward can be our main focus rather than grades. Of course, we have to give grades. The students must have grades. The students must know what their grade is based on and feel they are being graded fairly. But the main focus of the class can be on what we are learning and how we can use that. I think that has a better chance of allowing students to take time to ask questions that might not necessarily be related to, is this going to be on the test? Am I being tested on this? We can have questions that are broader for learning, not for grades. Another factor to consider is our flexibility in our lesson plans and student empowerment. Giving students a chance to take a bit of control of what they are learning and the topics that are covered in class. So in order to do that, we as teachers need some flexibility. We can't be too rigid about what we're doing. We need to allow the students to be able to express themselves and bring their interests into the class. Their interests, well, things they are interested in, they are also more likely to be curious about. And in order to have that flexibility, we need to take that into account in the planning phase. So when we are planning our classes, planning our semester, before the semester, before each class, we need to make sure that we have time for diversions, time for questions, time for students to think about questions. We can plan when we will give students time to think or reflect on either the language targets for the day, or in a more topic-based class, the topics that are being discussed, giving students, planning to give students time to reflect in order to make connections, and then come back with some questions that they can pose to the class and potentially learn something that they didn't plan on. I know for my students, they can come up with questions, but giving students time to think about their questions results in much better and much deeper, more deep questions than if everything is just in real time. Depending on the level of your students, you may not need to give as much time, but I think all students will benefit from the time to reflect, pose a question, think about what they want to ask, and then ask it. Additionally, in terms of the planning, there's the materials selection. So some materials lend themselves better to curious diversions. Materials that incorporate language and connections to the real world do a better job in giving students that chance to kind of think about, how does this language fit into my life? How does the language fit into my world? And then from that, we can make connections, they can make connections, and see how that relates, see what kind of other questions they can ask and what kind of other things they can learn. So the planning stage is possibly the most important stage for bringing curiosity into the classroom. Planning for thinking time, planning for time where students can ask questions, and planning so that grades are not the central component of the class, but it's more the process of learning. So thank you very much for making it through this video talk. I'm curious, what do you think about how we can bring curiosity into our classrooms, and what kind of role you think it plays in the learning process? I hope we have a chance to discuss some of these issues in the MELTA conference.